Anyways, let's bring in Justin Dunk now from 3downnation.com. Just joining the conversation. How you doing, JD?
Well, guys, what about you?
We're doing great. We're doing great. Always enjoying your coverage of the CFL and so forth, and your perspective on it. Can you answer, please? Take your swing at the poll question. Well, if as a fan, because as a media, you're going to the stadium anyways. But as a fan, would you be hesitant to go in when the pandemic is over?
I would be hesitant a little bit, but I think if it was over and there was either a vaccine or we were sure that there was a way to treat it, that I'd feel much better.
Okay. Well, yeah, I totally get it. I'm just saying a health green light, it's you can go in. That's the question. Now, Justin, been a lot of news in the CFL the last couple of days. What do you know about this 2020 season? And maybe I'll start with the Grey Cup because it's here, so everybody's asking, is it going to be affected? Where are we at as we sit here today?
Randy Ambrosie has been staunch in his stance that the Grey Cup is going to stay as scheduled in Regina, but there have been some other people around the league that have said, well, what if you have to move the Grey Cup? Could it be played indoors potentially later in the year? So even though Ambrosie won't address it right now, obviously wants to keep it in Saskatchewan, but I think it's definitely a possibility. And as far as the season goes, I think the minimum number of games that you would have to play in terms of talking to people around the league would be 8. So you'd essentially play every team once and then go to the playoffs. That's the minimum that they're looking at in one of the scenarios right now. But as we know, with the uncertainty due to the coronavirus, remains to be seen.
Yeah, would we say 9? I could see 8. I could live with 8. Could you live with 8?
8 would be epic, man. Imagine those games. Every single one would mean so much that I'd be all right with 8. It's better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Jump in, Darren.
I would be too. I kind of, my memory voted, I said 12 just because we seem to really get things settled out 2/3 into the season. But yeah, 8 would be awesome. We're used to that, Justin, with the Canada West schedule. 8 games is pretty exciting. If you lose a couple, you're out pretty quickly. So that's pretty awesome. But you got, I wanted to talk about your report. That's what I wanted to ask you about, was the report about potentially having every contract expire if the season doesn't happen. Where has that gone since the days since you launched it on 3 Down?
Well, it's been well read throughout the country and honestly the continent as well. North America surprised a lot of people in personnel offices. I was hearing that, general manager types and front office scouts were literally freaking out when they first read the report. So it was surprising to me that it was such an unknown to at least a number of people around the league. There were some who knew about it. The PA and the league had talked about it a little bit, and I asked the CFL office for comment. They didn't have any because they didn't want to put their legal position on it out publicly, which is smart. So could it actually happen? That's probably way off in the distance. But if there are players, let's say, like, for example, Jordan Williams-Lambert a couple of years ago, who was able to get out of his deal and sign an NFL contract with the Chicago Bears, obviously he's back with the Riders now. But if you look at the language, it's possible to get out. So using a current scenario, Nate Hawley, the most outstanding rookie in the CFL, has NFL interest and would like to, if he could, get out of his contract. And this is one way that he could. Line 16 in all standard player contracts could be up for a debate in a legal setting.
How chaotic do you think it is behind the scenes with the CFL amid the governors, the owners, and the commissioner? What's the panic level, do you think? Because we're only seeing it from the outside, but I also know how it works from the inside. How fearful are you, or do you think they are, that there might not be a season?
That's so tricky. I think it's certainly within the discussions there that what could happen if we don't have a season. I've talked to obviously a bunch of people around the league, and they almost feel like, let's say, for example, Toronto, Montreal, and BC, that if they didn't play a season, they might lose less money than they would if they were operating. Because you look at a large amount of the expenses for these teams throughout the league comes on players, whether it's the salary cap, guys on the injured list, flying players in and out for workouts, or then potentially eventually signing them. So I think it would certainly be a financial blow to the league overall if there was no season. But I also believe that's why Ambrosie and the governors and the owners are going to look at this in a really flexible way, that if in a certain scenario, the coronavirus continues and pushes past the ideal date where they could get 8 games in and still keep the Grey Cup in Regina as scheduled in late November, that then you need to get into those other thinking ideas. Okay, well, could we play into December or January if there was a window there to still get 8 games in? So I don't think it's necessarily panic. It's just going through every scenario to literally be ready for whenever, hopefully, behind us.
For sure. Now, one question that producer Clark brought up was, and I thought about this yesterday, let's just say anarchy reigns. Every contract's ripped up and where everybody's a free agent. And you have a draft. Who's the number 1 player in the CFL? I might just go with my man crush, Cody Fajardo. I want you all to think about it. But who do you reasonably think would go, Justin?
Well, Roddy, I don't know if you're going to like this answer, but you might actually, because there's been a bit of a feud. I would have to look at Bo Levi Mitchell. And one of the number 1 reasons why is because when Bo Levi Mitchell almost made it to free agency not too long ago, fellas, the Toronto Argos were close to shelling out nearly $1 million per year to get Mitchell to come to Toronto. Yes, he would have helped from a marketing standpoint. He's brash. He understands what to do in the media. So if I was building a CFL roster right now, Bo Levi Mitchell would be my number 1 pick from the standpoint of 2 Grey Cup rings, 2 MOPs, and he is a media darling and a lightning rod, a guy that fans want to come out and see and also listen to.
Oh, I completely agree, except for maybe in Calgary, but we won't go down that road. They should be selling out that stadium every game to come watch this guy. For whatever reason, they don't. I totally get it. And I tell you what, I was talking to a guy from Katy, Texas this morning, and I said, Bo's got to do one thing, and he could be the greatest quarterback this league's ever seen, hands down. I'm not going to tell you what I think that is, but that's I think the same thing of Bo Levi. You got to pick who would be number 1?
Yeah, it's hard because I don't know which side of the football to go on. For me, it'd be Willie Jefferson.
Come on, DuPont, give us a pick.
Hey, get off the fence.
I'd pick Willie Jefferson. I think having him off the edge, I think, and starting on the defensive side of the football, that's where I'd go. I'd go with Willie.
Oh, I didn't know that he could play quarterback.
Doesn't have to.
Fair enough.
But you know what? He probably could.
Yeah, exactly.
He probably could.
By the way, Justin, while we have you, one of our viewers, Dave Bircher, has written in. He says, when Ambrosi said that 18 games were a possibility, even starting in July, is player safety not an issue? My take on that is that the Players Association would comply because they want to play too. I don't think they'd be as concerned. But where do you think player safety would roll into this in a condensed schedule?
It's going to rank high overall, just looking at not wanting to have any of those players get the coronavirus. But it should be stated that whatever agreement happens, if we do get a season, if COVID allows that to happen, the CFL Players Association is going to be heavily involved in that type of setting and discussion before we decide, okay, well, are we playing 8 games, 10, 12, and how many weeks or months are we fitting those games into? So the players will agree to it. To be quite honest, guys, I think there's going to be almost a little bit of a coronavirus CBA, if you will, with these discussions between the PA and the players.
Do you know or think that the CFL is modeling the other leagues or will look at what they're doing? It's hard because everybody's going on the fly, but you're hearing that in the NHL, the NBA, and the NFL, that the players are willing to scrap the CBA and draw up a new one. Those leagues are doing that. Do you think the CFL is going to follow that model?
All options need to be on the table. The difference with the CFL is, as you guys know, is just the sheer amount of athletes that you have to have sort of in one area, right? The NBA obviously had that idea of potentially going to Vegas and everyone was quarantined and they could finish there with no fans in the stands and everyone just sort of sealed off from the public playing those games in one arena. That would be a little more difficult to do in terms of the CFL. And the other issue that's going to come up is the border. What do the governments have to say when we get down the line here in terms of opening up the border? Because Trudeau and Trump have been in a bit of a battle themselves. So that's way higher than the powers that be in the CFL.
Anything else for Justin?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Well, you guys are leading the charge here through the pandemic. Well, you always do with your coverage and so forth, but maybe just a shout out for 3downnation.com with what you got cooking up there today, Justin.
Well, literally, we've got Connor Cook cooking. The Toronto Argos are recruiting the former star Michigan State product, and he played for the Oakland Raiders. Actually, the first quarterback in the Super Bowl era to have his first NFL start come in a playoff game. So we have that news up today. And I got to add one thing, because you guys were talking about the sideline reporting earlier. The guy that's always in DuPont's ear is Dave Roberts, because he wants the goods, but it's so much easier to sit in that seat and ask the sideline reporter to ask instead of doing the asking. So, Dupes, I
He's
feel
a
you,
Nazi.
buddy.
You know, Justin, you know.
Oh, I know. And Dave's always weird. Listen, I've worked with Dave too, and he hates when I say things like that, but he's a taskmaster. He's
good at it.
He's very good. Probably the best that I've ever worked with, but he's probably watching right now. Justin, thanks for the time. I know you're a busy guy. Keep it up, my friend.
Cheers, guys. Be safe out there.
Justin, you too. Justin Dunk from 3downnation.com. You can follow on Twitter at JDunk12. As I say, Canadian football coverage runs on Duncan.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.